If a child is buried at dawn, and the earth rejects her by noon, know this: the grave was afraid. They said it was for the peace of the clan. They said the land was angry. But the soil knows the difference between a sacrifice and a lie. And that morning, Umu learned that the ground does not swallow what heaven has claimed. In the red earth hut on Igbo land, where the air tastes of palm wine and smoke, and elders speak in proverbs before they speak in names, there lay the village of Umu. It was a village cradled by ancient Iroko trees and watched over by Allah, the earth goddess, whose shrine stood beneath a canopy of silent leaves. The people of Umunri believed something with their full chest. The earth hears everything. It hears lies whispered under moonlight. It hears jealousy masked as righteousness. It hears prayers buried beneath pride. And it never forgets. When Nkemdilim gave birth to her daughter during the Harmattan season, a strange wind circled the compound 3 times before settling into an uneasy stillness. The dust did not enter the hut. It formed a ring around it. The midwife wiped her hands and stared at the infant wrapped in white cloth. "She is quiet," the woman said. "She is strong," Nkemdilim replied, sweat shining on her dark temples. Outside, Okafor paced, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a thick red isiagu with lions embroidered in gold thread. He was a man respected, feared, and envied. The son of titled ancestors, a custodian of lineage, a man whose pride walked ahead of him before he entered any gathering. He had waited 15 years for a child, and when the baby came, she did not cry. She looked. Her eyes opened wide and steady. Too steady. Not searching. Not confused. Watching. The midwife shifted her weight. Some births arrive with noise. Some arrive with warning, she muttered. Nkemdilim tightened her hold on the child. This one arrives with purpose. That night, the ancient Udala tree at the center of Okafor's compound split down the middle without wind or lightning. The crack echoed like a gunshot across the moonlit compounds. Villagers gathered with torches, eyes darting. Okafor stood silent. The baby inside did not stir. And old Nachi, the keeper of sacred things, whispered slowly, "When a tree splits without storm, the storm is walking in flesh. A child who comes without crying may have come remembering." They named her Adaku, daughter of wealth. But from infancy, it was clear her wealth was not of yam bands or bride price. She crawled towards soil instead of toys. She pressed her palms against the ground and giggled to nothing visible. Dogs who barked at strangers lay quietly beside her. Goats bent their heads low when she passed. Once, at 3 years old, she toddled into the shrine grove without fear. Women gasped. Children dared not cross that unseen boundary. But Adaku walked as if escorted. When she returned, she carried in her tiny fist a white feather no one in Umunri had seen before. Okafor's chest tightened. He did not like what he did not understand, and Adaku was becoming a mirror of things he feared. By the age of 7, she spoke less like a child and more like someone who had listened longer than her years allowed. One evening, during the New Yam Festival, when drums thundered and masquerades leapt like spirits made of raffia and mystery, Adaku stood watching. A masquerade, tall, fierce, painted in chalk and crimson, danced before the square. Children scattered, women ululated, men nodded with reverence. Adaku did not move. The masquerade came closer, swaying. She tilted her head and spoke in a voice barely above wind. "You hide your theft well." The drums faltered. The masquerade stumbled, and in a shocking moment, it fell. The carved mask cracked. Beneath it lay the sweating face of Chief Omenka's son. Gasps erupted like fire catching dry harmattan grass. Adaku's father's face darkened with both humiliation and fear. Chifomenka's eyes burned. "Children speak foolishness," he snapped. But no one laughed, because children do not expose secrets that do not exist. When a child points at a lizard and calls it a crocodile, elders listen twice. The drought came soon after. Rain avoided Umunri as though the clouds held resentment. Streams thinned into cracked scars on earth. Yams shriveled before harvest. Cows birthed stillborn calves. And murmurs began. She shamed the masquerade. She insulted sacred ritual. Spirits walk with her. Even those who had once smiled at the strange girl now watched her with unease. Ijeoma, Okafor's second wife, sharp-eyed and patient like a vulture waiting for wind, leaned into his husband's uncertainty. "If the clan falls, your title falls with it." "My daughter has done nothing," Okafor said, but his voice lacked the strength of conviction. "A man who ignores smoke will soon explain fire," Ijeoma replied softly. At night, Adaku dreamed of an old woman under an enormous iroko tree. "You will be given to soil," the woman would say. Adaku would nod. "And I will return?" "If roots reject rot, the tree survives." Adaku woke one morning and found the cracked udala tree in their compound beginning to sprout green leaves along its split. She smiled. But the council of elders had already met. Nachi spoke solemnly beneath moonlight. "The land demands balance." Chifomenka's voice carried cold satisfaction. "The child unsettles spirits." "She unsettles liars," someone muttered. Silence strangled the comment, and fear won. They called it appeasement. They did not call it murder. When fear dresses in tradition, even cruelty borrows a sacred name. They chose dawn for the burial. Mist rolled across red earth like mourning cloth. Adaku wore white, her braids freshly woven by trembling fingers of her mother. Nkemdelim could barely stand. "I carried you inside me," she whispered. "And I carry you still," Adaku replied quietly. Okafor did not meet his daughter's eyes. The pit was too deep, too deep. Men avoided each other's gaze. As they lowered her with ropes, a strange stillness wrapped the grove. Adaku did not cry. She did not plead. She pressed her palms against the soil wall. "You know me," she murmured. Above, Chifomenka raised his staff. "Cover it." Layer by layer, red earth fell. Breath halted. Silence thickened. The grave sealed. And for one long moment, nothing happened. Villagers began to turn away. Then the ground exhaled. A crack, small, sharp, expanding. A hand broke through the soil. Alive. Gasps turned into screams. The mound collapsed outward, and Adaku stood from the earth unsoiled, her hair untouched, white cloth radiant in the growing morning light. "I belong to breath," she said steadily. "The soil will not keep what it did not call." Some fell to their knees, others fled. Okafor staggered backward, horror and awe wrestling in his chest. Nachi trembled violently. "The prophecy," he whispered. "The earth may open for the guilty, but it parts for the chosen." The day Adaku rose from the grave, Umunri did not celebrate. They feared her more. A miracle that exposes guilt does not bring comfort, it brings panic. Women whispered behind woven fences. Men avoided the path she walked. Children were dragged indoors when she passed. Only her mother held her without trembling. But something had changed. The cracked udala tree in their compound, once a symbol of omen, now bled fresh green along its split trunk. Sap glistened like tears hardened into strength. Adaku would stand beneath it at dusk, pressing her back against the sky in the back, as if listening through wood. and sometimes she would close her eyes and breathe in rhythm with the earth. Okafor watched her from a distance. His pride had not yet broken, only bent. Chief Omenka, however, sharpened his resentment. His humiliation during the festival still burned like pepper in an open wound. Now the burial had failed, and instead of silencing the child, it had elevated her. He gathered allies quietly. Fear thrives in closed rooms. She will bring greater catastrophe, he insisted at a secret meeting beneath the shrine grove. But the drought eased after her rising, one man argued nervously. For now, Omenka replied, spirits bargain before they devour. And if we do nothing, then we let a child rule grown men with mystery. The seeds of a second betrayal were planted that night. A snake caught once will not stop writhing. It coils for another strike. The rains returned briefly, soft and uncertain. Streams filled just enough to raise hope. But hope in Umunuri had become fragile, like a calabash already cracked once. Adaku began speaking boldly now, no longer merely observing. When a widow was denied inheritance by greedy relatives, she stood in the square and said, "Land given in blessing cannot be seized in shame." When a trader diluted palm oil with water to cheat buyers, she announced publicly, "What you thin for profit will thin your own breath." Each time she spoke, something hidden surfaced. Each time, someone powerful felt exposed. Nachi began visiting her secretly at twilight. "Child," he said one evening, lowering his aged body onto a carved wooden stool, "what do you hear when you press your ears to the ground?" Adaku looked toward the west where the sky blazed orange. "I hear the past shifting." He studied her face carefully. "You are not afraid." She smiled faintly. "Only of silence." He nodded slowly. "Balance unsettles the corrupt before it restores the pure." Even as he spoke, shadows lengthened beyond the compound. That night, warriors from a distant neighboring settlement slipped quietly into Umunuri under Omenka's promise of shared land. It would not be burial this time. It would be disappearance. They came for her under a moon veiled by thin cloud. Nkemdilim awoke to a hand over her mouth. Okafor rose too late. By the time he reached the doorway, torches were already retreating into darkness. He saw her once over a stranger's shoulder. She did not struggle. She held his gaze. Not with accusation. Not with anger. With something worse. Understanding. That look fractured him more deeply than blame. They bound her wrists and carried her to the abandoned stone quarry beyond the village borders, a place older than memory, where the earth had once been ripped open for red rock. Few went there now. Animals avoided it. Even wind seemed reluctant to linger in its hollow belly. They lowered her without ceremony this time. No chants, no audience, only rough hands and harder hearts. Chief Omenka stepped forward. "This ends tonight." Adaku met his eyes. "It ends," she agreed softly. And stones followed her descent. Large, heavy, final. The quarry swallowed sound. When the last rock fell, silence closed like a lid. A lie told louder does not become truth. It only deepens its grave. 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, the sky darkened unnaturally at midday, not with rain clouds, with a pressure that felt alive. Birds flew low, disoriented. Goats bleated and broke their ropes. At the shrine of Allah, the clay statue cracked down its center, echoing the split of the old Udala tree. Villagers ran in terror. "What have we done?" someone cried. Nachi fell flat to the earth. "The land rejects injustice," he whispered. At the quarry, an impossible sight unfolded.
The stones began to shift, not violently, not explosively. They rolled slowly aside as though pushed by unseen hands. A tremor, steady, rhythmic, hummed through the ground. Then from the darkness below, a glow. Soft, golden. Adaku rose again, but she did not climb. The earth lifted her. Her once dark hair now streaked with threads of silver, though she was barely into her 15th reigning season. Her eyes burned with ancient light. Dust swirled around her like obedient spirits. She stepped onto the quarry edge barefoot, alive, transformed, not untouched by death, but strengthened by it. "You cannot bury what the soil has claimed as its witness," she said, voice layered with something deeper than youth. Warriors fell backward in horror. Chief Omenka stumbled and scrambled away. The tremor ceased, but fear did not. The river that refuses drowning has learned its own depth. She walked back to Umunuri alone. No escort, no drum. The village saw her silhouette at dusk and froze. This time, even the boldest skeptic dropped to his knees. Okafor approached her slowly. His shoulders that once stood wide now seemed smaller, thinner beneath his embroidered robes. "My daughter," he began. She raised her hand gently. "Do not call me only daughter." Her voice was not harsh, but it carried distance. He fell to his knees before her, the titled man, the proud custodian of lineage, broken. "I chose fear," he whispered. "Yes, and fear chose you." Nkemdilim wept openly, wrapping her arms around her child as though anchoring her to the world of flesh. But Adaku looked beyond them all. "The drought was not punishment," she declared to the gathered crowd. "The hunger was not wrath." Murmurs rippled. "It was theft." All eyes turned slowly toward Chief Omenka, her gaze fixed on him. "You sold grain meant for communal storage," his face drained of color. "You diverted offerings from Allah to traders beyond the river." Gasps exploded.
She stepped closer. "You buried me not for the land, but for your secret." The square erupted in chaos. Omenka tried to speak. No words came. Truth has a way of stealing breath. Nachi raised his staff. "This council is dissolved." Omenka fled that night, vanishing into surrounding territories. But corruption does not leave quietly. It returns with teeth. When rot is exposed to sun, it shrinks, but it plots in shadow. Seasons turned. Harmony began to mend. Rain came faithful again. Harvest overflowed. But whispers still clung to corners. She is no longer fully human. She walks between worlds. Adaku did not deny it. She moved with calm authority now, mediating disputes, healing fevers with herbs and touch, speaking truths before deception could root. Yet inside her grew a quiet ache. She was young, yet no longer a child. She dreamt often of the quarry, not with fear, but with longing. One evening under a swollen moon, she confided in Nachi. "I do not belong entirely to this soil." The old priest nodded. "Some seeds grow into trees, others grow into forests." "I am tired," she admitted. He smiled gently. "Power is heavy only before it is understood." "What is my end?" she asked. He looked at the stars. "Not burial." Chief Omenka returned at the head of foreign warriors during dry season. Promises of fertile lands and shared power fueled their march. War drums thundered against Umunri's walls. Panic spread like wildfire through raffia roofs.
Some cried, "It is because of her." Others shouted, "She is our protection." Division sharpened. Okafor stood trembling at the gate. Adaku stepped forward, dressed in white once more, hair silver in moonlight. She said, "No blood." Omenka laughed from horseback. "Let us see if you survive steel." She knelt and pressed both palms into the red earth before the approaching army. "Mother," she whispered. The ground answered. A deep, pulsing tremor rolled outward, not destructive, but decisive. Cracks formed before the warriors' feet. Horses reared violently. Weapons dropped. Dust spiraled high into the sky, forming a towering column between the two sides. Omenka screamed curses, but even his voice shook. Adaku stood. This land recognizes greed, and it refuses invaders. The tremor intensified briefly. Foreign warriors fled in terror. Omenka fell hard from his horse, crawling backward as the ground split inches from his chest. He sobbed, not from injury, but from collapse of pride. She looked at him. "You buried me to protect your lie. I return not for vengeance, but for balance." The earth stilled. War dissolved without bloodshed. Power that protects is stronger than power that conquers. Years passed. Adaku's presence became legend across villages. Children sang songs about the girl who rose from graves. Women brought infants for blessing. Men consulted her before planting or settling disputes. Okafor changed. He walked humbler, spoke softer. Pride replaced by gratitude. One evening, Adaku returned to the quarry alone. The place no longer felt hostile. It felt like origin. She stepped to its edge and breathed deeply. "I have fulfilled what I was made for," she whispered. The wind stirred gently through tall grasses. Below, faint green growth had begun among stones. She closed her eyes and pressed her palms into the ground one final time. "I return what you kept for me." When villagers came searching at dawn, they found no body, only a tall tree rising from the quarry's heart. Its trunk bore a faint vertical scar, like the split udala. Its leaves shimmered silver in sunlight. The soil beneath it pulsed warm, alive, breathing. Nachi knelt. She was never meant for burial. She was meant for becoming. And to this day in Umunri, elders end the tale beneath moonlight with a final reminder. The earth does not reject what is false. It rejects what is unfinished. So if ever you see soil rise where fear has buried something too quickly, remember Adaku. For the grave may close over flesh, but destiny remembers how to breathe. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and share for more interesting stories like this. Bye.